All right, how is everyone doing? I am Rich CELENZA, and thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. So, what I want to get into today is what I'm calling stop overanalyzing, critiquing, and criticizing women like you're the shit. So, if you know anything about my podcast, a lot of times I throw these things out there, I guess you could say, and sometimes I come off offensive, and I hope I don't. I just kind of want to call people out on their bullshit, including my own at times. And I don't think we do it enough. So, regarding this subject, hold on one second. Let me get some water. I didn't realize my throat was this. Sorry about that. I'm losing my voice here. I just had a long week. Ended up going to a wedding, and for some reason, in some traveling, my voice is getting a little scratchy. But, so, if you know anything about me, I teach a Mastering Self-Confidence program. It's to help men find the woman or women of their dreams, even if they've been through a bad breakup or divorce. And a lot of what I go through is not just helping men. It's, I guess you could say, building an identity that helps them with fashion, fitness, personality, identity, all these different things. If they want to improve on these things, I guess I can give them my advice. You could take it or not. It's just things that I've learned over the last, I guess you could say, or my entire life growing up in the nightclub industry, bar, restaurant, along with being around thousands of different people, and also being in the film industry and fashion industry to a certain degree. So, when I say what I said earlier regarding men really overanalyzing, let's just start with this here. And I hope I don't come off like a complete asshole, but I think I am to a certain degree going to come off, because when I talk to a lot of people I know that are single, this includes friends, family members, colleagues. At first, they know my personality, so they know how to handle it. But I don't think people, especially men, realize how much analyzing they do of other people, especially women, and not analyzing themselves. So the first thing I would say to anyone is start becoming self-aware of your behavior. Don't get obsessed with, what other women are doing to you or what they've done to you in the past or how you perceive all women, because no two women are the same, just like no two guys are really the same. And I know we'd like to throw all these women and say, oh, women love to do this. All women love that. All women, whatever the case may be, we're kind of always categorizing them and kind of throwing them into a hole, which there are a lot of women that do have similarities. There's no question. Like, a lot of women like to shop. A lot of women like to choose, hypothetically. A lot of women may like to wear makeup. There's also millions of women that don't like necessarily shopping or collecting shoes or wearing makeup as well. But put that aside, is back to analyzing. Stop analyzing, and I used to say a lot of people that you should put a big chest on a big A on your chest, because all you do a lot of times, and it's not just women, men, especially single men, you analyze everything, which is cool. If you're analyzing things, I believe, to benefit yourself, and I'm not telling you not to analyze, just so we get our heads clear. You can analyze whatever you want, but when it becomes an obsession and when your analyzation becomes a fault or looking for faults, if that makes sense, because that's what I think a lot of analyzing ends up becoming, is you, no matter what, finding fault in things, especially with the opposite sex, or I don't care if you're into dudes, women, whatever the case may be, you just start to analyze them and not analyze them and looking at all the things that they have to offer, or analyzing all the strengths that they have. You just kind of analyze them to see the flaws again. And I used to be like that myself. So I'm the first one to say, it was kind of funny. My ex-wife used to call me the analyzer. And she's like, you analyze everything to death. And I think I got that actually from my father. And then I realized over-analyzing was starting to make me crazy. And I also realized that I really do, at least I believe about myself, I see a lot of good in everybody. But I also see a lot of bad. For some reason, it's just not, and when I say that, I don't mean just by appearance. I mean by just actions. I have this instinct or whatever, and I'm sure a lot of you have it as well, where you just I'm analyzing something to death, and I'm kind of finding everything wrong within that situation, not really focusing in on the good. And I think it's a protection mechanism to a certain degree. It's an instinct not to get hurt. And I also think I do that physically with people I'm trying to analyze. If I'm on an airplane, is someone going to make a move here? Or if I'm in the streets, it's physical. It's protection is what I should say as well. Get some more water here. Sorry about this. But if you started analyzing and looking at a lot of strengths or in women that they have, men I'm talking to, then I think you'd be shocked at like how much one you have in common with women, even though you've been probably programmed that you don't. Also, that you've been programmed analyzing women is it's the position where it's either we're going to be in a relationship and that's or not. And I can't be friends with you necessarily unless maybe I work with you or unless maybe I've known you for years. But a lot of men have been programmed not to have friendships with women. And I also sometimes blame women on that as well, because if you've been in relationships with women, a lot of times they don't want their men having relationships with any other woman except them, which is ridiculous. Maybe, again, colleagues or people you work with, they get the pass. But as far as you keeping relationships, a lot of times with women that you've grown up with or that you've known or even that you've dated, they don't want that. And I think a lot of times that's men as well, throwing that on women, saying, hey, you can't be friends with your exes. But I think a lot of men are a lot more lenient towards that because women just are more friendly, I think, in general, to a certain degree, keeping friendships. So if they had friendships in high school or grade school or even college, I think dudes are kind of like, they're like, yeah, that's her friend. They're good friends. They grew up together. I think it's a little different. But I do believe with women, it's a little more harsh. But, the first thing I tell a lot of men is you have to first learn how to have friendships with women. Forget about getting them into bed. Forget about one-night stands. Forget it all about that shit. And I'm not going to get into that on this. But if you are interested in anything regarding that, just check out my book, either Wingman or MasteringSelfConfidence.com, because that's what I basically help men do. So the other thing I want to get into, what was the second thing here? We talk about analyzing and then critiquing. Very similar. You are constantly, especially if you're a single dude and you catch yourself being single for long periods of time or not having strong relationships, I think a lot of that revolves around you constantly critiquing women. And again, not in a positive way. I know we all have certain standards, which is wonderful. I definitely think, and I just did a podcast where I even talk about men stop being intimidated by dating women that have either more money than you, are more successful than you, could have a better job than you, whatever the case may be. Do not be intimidated by that. And I get we all have certain standards that we want to live by. But if you are constantly critiquing women or critiquing others, again in a negative way, usually, again, you need to start critiquing yourself. Because a lot of the problems dwell within yourself. A lot of times, too, I realize when we're critiquing people, picking out a lot of their flaws, a lot of those flaws are things that we may find unattractive, or we do find unattractive. But a lot of those flaws are kind of similar to what we are. And I know that sounds kind of bonkers. And this goes way back to, let's go back to the nightclub business. A lot of my friends who used to party, they were anti-party girl. They loved partying with the girl, fooling around with the woman, but that wasn't the type of woman they wanted to date, which was quite interesting. And then they would judge these women. They'd call them whores, sluts, all these stupid things, when they were basically behaving the exact same way these women were behaving, but they would be condemned, and the guys would be, in their mind, thinking everything's fine. So they'd be like, I want a good girl. Well, if you're in nightclubs partying, doing drugs, alcohol, or just partying in general, or doing whatever you're doing, if that's your behavior, because that was my behavior, I was always critiquing or analyzing others and saying, you shouldn't behave like this, I can behave like this, which is insane. That's absolutely crazy. And again, I was just better off saying, hey, I like to party now in this point of my life, or do these things, and I like hanging out with these type of women, because what was interesting is, in my case was, then if, say, you hung out with somebody, say a good girl, a religious girl, or somebody that didn't party, but I'm in that lifestyle, I'd be like, yeah, this is the type of girl that, you're better off marrying, which may or may not be the case. But my point was, when you're with them, you're bored out of your mind. You have to realize in different times of your life, you're going to behave differently, and you have different interests. Now, would I say to go marry a party girl? I don't know. I don't think all women that party when they're younger end up bad women by any means. They're just out to have a good time like you. And again, if you're back analyzing or critiquing them to death, which a lot of us do, or putting women down, or expecting a certain behavior out of them that you don't have to uphold, I think you're just ridiculous. That's just my opinion. I believe we're all human beings. We all want to experience different things in life. And I think a lot of times in life in general, do as I say, not as I do, that's a lot of people. Not just people who party. I'm just saying people in general. They'll be the first ones to analyze or critique others and bitch about them and their behavior. But they basically at some time or another in their life did it or are doing it or are about to do it or are going to do it in the future. And that goes for, I talk about that a lot with cheating. Everybody hates a cheater when they get cheated on, but when they get cheated or when they cheat, they want forgiveness. It's kind of ridiculous. But those are just some things that I believe as far as when you're dating women and things in that nature. So, and the last one we were talking about was criticizing. So we're basically analyzing, critiquing, and criticizing women. I don't know, and I think when I was younger I did that as well. I think criticizing people, not just women in general, not just women, it makes us for some reason think we're doing better than them. I don't know why I did it, but I've done it myself where I'm criticizing the opposite sex, especially sometimes it could be even somebody you're interested in. You want to criticize them too because you either you may not be able to get them or be in a relationship with them, or they don't like you, so you may do that. You also may criticize them because you're just an asshole. That could just be that. Or I think sometimes you're criticizing somebody because you want to make yourself feel better, or you want to make yourself at a higher standard and make them feel like inferior to you or any of that stupid shit, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think that's one of the worst things you could do, I think, in life a lot of times is do these three things to a certain degree when you go into the negative with it. Because no one deserves to be treated badly, I think. Now, if they do horrific things towards you, that's different. But what I'm talking about is a lot of guys out there that want to find that certain someone or even date other women, but have a lot of issues and they don't want to address them. And I've talked about this before on my podcast a lot of times. Again, you're the problem, they're not. Don't throw your problems. Don't make it sound like everybody else has a problem but you. And if you looked at a lot of your previous relationships, you will be able to see a pattern, I think, a lot of times saying, wow, how did I behave during this situation? How did I behave during, this relationship or this situation or this relationship? All different situations. Why am I leaving them, or why are they leaving me? Why am I cheating? Why does this always end up me alone, I guess you could say. And I think a lot of men don't want to admit that they have a lot of problems, and they have a lot of insecurities, they have a lot of fears. A lot of them may drink too much, they may be too verbally abusive, physically abusive, which is horrific. A lot of these things, they don't want to first kind of come to a situation where they want to address these things. And some are kind of obvious. So if you're hypothetically an alcoholic or drug addict, or say you have gambling addiction, those are kind of very, I guess you could say, very in-your-face type of problems. But see, there's a lot more than just those type of problems. There's a lot of behavior problems, I think, and that can definitely be in the public in general. The cues, a lot of people have horrible social cues. They don't realize when they're talking to a woman, for instance, the woman's not interested in them. A lot of times they don't realize they could be a pain in the ass. They can be manipulators, men. They can lie a lot. In public, they may get drunk. They may be too touchy. May make women feel uncomfortable. They may be available sometimes too needy, I guess you could say, too. which can turn a woman off. You may smell bad. Your breath may stink. Your BO, like I said, a lot of things you do, you may be very cheap. You may be a lot of things that are turning a lot of women off, but you just don't realize it, okay? And you have to take notice of yourself. And I talk about that all the time. I don't know why people, and I guess maybe because I'm middle-aged, I'm getting older, and I'm understanding a lot of this more and more and more. But I even knew this when I was younger, and again, being in the nightclub business with my father, and then me being in bars, restaurants, nightclubs, gentlemen clubs, all I was doing was, and I didn't even mean to be analyzing, I just seen so many different people, good, bad, religious, political, all different nationalities, races, religious views, just so many people I've been around my whole life being in those environments, because I didn't have a type of job where I would go to, say, an office and there was only, say, 5 people in the office, or 20 people at work, or 3, or whatever the case may be, or be in a situation where I was with a job a long period of time. I was just talking about this with my father yesterday when I had dinner, our kind of life was just moving from one place to another. And it would either be a bar, like I was just saying, a restaurant, a nightclub, a gentleman's club. And then we would also, besides going to all these different places collecting money, then we would also hang out at different restaurants all over the place. And then we also did different things regarding, we had a big league, a dart league, which he had like 1,000 members. We also would do different shows all over North America with vending. We'd go see different shows, let alone traveling. So we were around. Every time we'd even walk into a bar, restaurant, a lot of times there are some regulars, but there's so many new people. So you're constantly meeting new people. So even if we ran a tournament, say there would be 100 people there, 300 people. Some would be regulars and a lot of new people. Again, depending on our environment, it would be a lot or sometimes even a little. And then we'd also get new locations, right? And we would all of a sudden go into, say, one of the biggest billiard bars or chains in Florida. So you go from all of a sudden putting this equipment in, say, 5 bars that are the most popular that have 300-400 people on weekends, and you're in there, you're just constantly on an overflow of people you're just constantly meeting. And they want to meet you. And the funny thing is, you know the owners, you know the managers, because you work with these people. So they're going to introduce you to more and more people. It's not like just the average person walking into a bar that doesn't know anybody, or they go in with their friend or 2-3 friends, and you mingle with a certain amount of people. We basically would mingle with almost everyone to a certain degree. So what the benefit of that is learning how to, I think, for one, I guess you could say, become a master of small talk, because life becomes small talk. You meet someone new. Hey, what do you do? What do you do? This, that. Okay, that's cool. Where are you from? What do you, all these, and then you move on to the next. You move on to the next, and you can kind of maneuver. You start to become a master of maneuvering through those environments, and that's why I kind of wrote the book Wingman. Originally, I wanted to show men, no matter what situation they're in or where they're at, they can maneuver. And that's what really, it's kind of like a shark that never stops moving. You have to maneuver that way, especially if you're looking to meet different types of women, or you're looking for that certain someone. You just don't meet 1 or 2 women and say, okay, this is it for the rest of my life. Because there are thousands of women that you come across every day. Just you walking the streets, possibly, especially if you live in a major city. Now, if you just have a place where you go to work and come home. But even if you work out in a gym, you'd be shocked how many hundreds of women there are walking past you. If you go to a restaurant, if you go anywhere, if you go to a theme park, hypothetically, or wherever you go to hang out, you can go to a car dealership looking for a car. There's tons of people there. But it's one, becoming comfortable in that environment, and also putting yourself in the right place at the right time. A lot of men, if you catch yourself, again, analyzing, critiquing women and never being satisfied, most likely you are putting yourself in a place where you're surrounding yourself by women that you're not interested in. And the truth is, you're sending that vibe out. And usually women have better instincts than anyone. They're picking up on your vibe and spitting you out. You become a reflector to them, because they just know you have a bad attitude, or you're just not for them. But you think you're going to sit at a bar, you're going to sit in these locations, even locally, and think that you're going to kind of play it off, and maybe the right one will come, or you'll become one of those guys who I call you like who likes you, which is horrific. You need to pick your ass up and find out first what type of woman you truly want, or women, and start putting yourself in those positions of being around those type of women. So if you like hunting, hypothetically, you might want to join a hunting club, or go, find women that like to hunt as well. You may not like, if you like hunting, you finding a woman that likes the opposite of that. I don't know, what would that be? I'm just using this for an example. That instead of, say you like to hunt, fish, you're an outdoorsman, and then you start dating a high maintenance girl that lives a different lifestyle in, say, a city where she's all corporate and she doesn't like to do any of these things. And I'm not saying not to be open-minded and not, maybe try that out, dating different types of women. I definitely think that. But putting yourself again around a lot of women that have the same interests that you have helps. Okay? Because a lot of times the ones you're meeting aren't always going to be the ones that like you, but they can always introduce you to someone else. And that's really what I believe relationships really evolve, is building friendships, and they kind of blossom from there. And then you meet someone, and then another from someone else, and another. And if you're a cool dude, you're going to always be recommended. And if you're a real cool dude, women are going to vouch for you and always introduce you to other friends, especially if they're taken. So that's something to definitely think about. But yes, please, if you are somebody out there who is single and that is miserable, or that feels alone, and this goes for women as well, you really got to start putting yourself in the right place. And again, not constantly throwing even men under the bus, saying all men are this way, all men want is this. Men, whatever you're kind of saying or believing, a lot of times may not be entirely true, if that makes sense. And it may be true in the environment you're in. So maybe if you are in an environment where, if you live in Alaska and you live around all guys that are outdoorsmen, or whatever you want to call that, and you're like, well, all men here, all they want to do is go hunt, fish. Well, if you're in Alaska, maybe in certain areas, that may be the case. You got to get to another area. Maybe you'll find, if you're looking for more of a corporate orientated man who's indoor, or a businessman, or a lawyer, or an accountant, or something like that, you again got to put yourself in those positions, and not, again, just like I was describing with men, overanalyzing women or critiquing them, or all these type of things in a negative way. A lot of women I see do the same things, because I have so many cousins and family members and friends that come up to me and they're like, Rich, all men suck. All men do this. All men care about is that. I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind. Stop. That's ridiculous to think that way. But they have it's kind of set. It's set in their mind, and it's almost like they have to find someone, and that person has to prove to them why to change their mind. Well, that's not their job. You've already kind of put a label on men. And the same with men, you label women. And a lot of times you'd be shocked once you really learn about women, how much you do have in common, like I said earlier, but how, if you just, how do I say this? A lot of times when even you're in a relationship, you're not open-minded enough to speak to one another, to talk to one another about the truth on what you really want to do in your life, or how you really feel, because you put up, I think sometimes you're performing, I call it. Especially if you start dating someone at the beginning, of course you're going to be behaving differently. You're not going to be doing things like farting in front of them, maybe belching, or doing certain things that if you've been in a relationship for long periods of time that you're going to do. But the truth is, you've really got to learn, the quicker you become yourself and more comfortable and honest with the other person, even if you're not dating, or if you're talking to somebody and you're genuinely who you are at that moment, that is going to go a long, long way. All right? So I don't know if I came off again too harsh in this podcast, but I definitely think, if you're out there, you're single, figure out first what you want, is what I always say. First and foremost, if you don't know what you want, right? How the hell, whoever you meet, like, how do I say this? If you need to figure out who you want. Let me just say that. But also keeping your options open, because a lot of times too, what you keep doing a lot of times when you date the same type of person and it not working out, there's a reason for that. So you may have to be more open-minded. This maybe try to date different types of women. Again, that can be a different nationality. It could be somebody who's just lives in a different environment. It could be somebody who's from another country. Just try to experiment. Again, don't overanalyze it to death, because a lot of times I ended up with a Filipino, and the funniest thing was, my mother, when I was younger, if I didn't go with an Italian woman, she wanted me to go Filipino from a very young age, and I'm like, you're out of your mind. That's probably the last type of woman I'm going to end up with. And it almost went full circle. I did end up with one, which is quite ironic. But I was kind of, especially middle-aged, I was more open-minded. And that took a long time, believe me, to a certain degree, but to say that I would be in a relationship with somebody different. But I had no problem growing it, like meeting other women or dating other women. But it was to say, let's get serious in a relationship with. That's a whole different component. But please find out what you want first, and also figure out your behavior. Is it working for you, or is it working against you? I don't think people really realize that most of the time it's working against you. All right? All right, I'm going to leave it at that. If you get a chance, just check out my richcelenza.com website. I also have that Mastering Self-Confidence program. That's masteringselfconfidence.com. But you can find out a lot of info also on me on YouTube. I put up different videos regarding all different places I visit. I give fitness advice on there, along with my favorite Italian restaurants. I go to different gyms all over North America and favorite places that I like to visit. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well. And please don't sell yourself short. Stop getting nuts, and stop bashing people, especially the opposite sex. If you're, if you're single, just relax. All right. Oh yeah, there's my book out there too, Wingman. You can check that out. I think it's wingmanthebook.com. You might dig that. Leave a comment, good or bad. So, all right. Take care, and if you're traveling, safe travels.